This program is brought to you by thepodcastfactory.com.
Ben Settle, super practical.
I'm not telling people to have a mistress. I'm teaching you, learn the lesson from the people who have a mistress, because there's many business lessons that apply.
Pious.
There's a part in the book of Revelation where Jesus says, I want you either hot or cold. I'm spewing lukewarm churches out. And I think it's a good way to look at your list.
Romantic to his very core.
Once in a while, I'll give my girl a present, like a Snickers bar or something.
And totes tender.
If someone asks you to walk on eggshells, smash the eggshells and let the chips fall wherever they may.
Adored by feminists everywhere.
It takes a strong woman to admit when she's wrong.
Not a judgmental bone in his entire body.
I look at all the free information people give just on Facebook and I go, what a bunch of time hoes.
Has a PhD in armchair philosophy.
In the land of dumbasses, the smartass is king.
You'll never meet a more sensitive guy.
If you really care about people, you shame the hell out of them. This is Ben Settle, the bensettle.com podcast, and this is going to be part 2 of, what did we say we're going to tell us? Villainous Persuasion secrets or something like that, Jonathan?
Yeah.
I can't remember. But basically when I'm going, the last episode, for anyone who missed it, there's 10 chapters in my Persuasion Secrets of the World's Most Charismatic and Influential Villains. There's 10 chapters, and I'm just kind of going through each chapter over this last episode and this one, just touching on some of the high points throughout the book in each chapter. So it's not like I'm giving the whole farm away or anything. I fully expect you to go there and buy it if you want to have the full story at least. Or if you just can't afford $3 or whatever, you just don't want it, that's fine too. No big deal. Either way, you should get enough value out of this where you can go forth and be more successful and more persuasive and have more influence in life. And I'm also doing this to kind of, get people talking about the book because the sequel is coming out the beginning of 2019. And so that's that. And I will be bribing the hell out of people to get it. So I talked about that a couple weeks ago, Jonathan, my 10-mile workday. And well, I created like 32 videos, 31 or 32, I can't remember. And they're going to get all that just for buying that book. Nice. That's when it launches. So that's going to be in 2019. You're not going to get it after, depending on when someone, so I have to say this, Jonathan. I have to say this because sometimes people are a little dense and they don't understand these things. That'll only be during the actual launch of whenever I launch it. If you buy it, if you're listening to this after the sequel came out, you're not getting any of these videos. So, I don't know what to tell you.
Too bad, so sad.
Well, too bad. So I'll tell you what. I don't reward bad behavior, and not being on my list and listening to this show in time is bad behavior. And as the email player's rule states, it's always your fault. And so it is. If you missed out, it's your own fault. It's not my fault. It's your fault. So that said, the last time I went over the first 5 chapters, and I believe it's episode 92 if you want to go back through it. I'm not going to rehash it all. This will be the second 5 chapters of the Villains book. And you can get the Villains book at villainsbook.com, and it just take you to the Amazon page. And there it is. You can read more about it. But moving on. So the 6th chapter, and we're going to go through 6 through 10 for this week. The 6th chapter is execute your inner nice guy with extreme prejudice. The vision I have in my mind, Jonathan, when I talk about this is like, I take my inner nice guy, I put him on his knees, not facing me. And I literally put a gun in and execute him. Now, I'm talking about my inner nice guy. I'm not talking about anyone else. Let me be very clear for like the mentally unbalanced listeners of the show, which there are many, I hope. I'm not saying to go hurt anybody or shoot anybody or anything. I'm just saying, figuratively speaking, your inner nice guy needs to go away. He needs to disappear. He's holding you back in many, many, many different ways. I spent probably most of my life a nice guy, Jonathan, and I was the first one to go around telling everyone what a nice guy I am and all that. And you know what it got me? Well, first of all, people who you really should never trust anyone who literally calls themselves a nice guy.
Yeah.
They're probably, I don't know about you, Jonathan, but in my experience, that usually means they're not. They're anything but, right? I mean,
gotta say it,
I'm
you
sure
ain't
you've dealt with these. If you have, exactly, as the email player's rule says, if you got to say it, you ain't it. And even if you are it, there's problems here with being the nice guy. First of all, people take advantage of nice guys. Girls will take advantage of you if you're a nice guy. And it's not like they're doing it maliciously. They're not. They're just like, you can't even blame them. You're literally putting yourself out there as a time hoe. They're going to take your time anymore. That's just how it works. And, this goes into business. It goes into your professional life. It goes into your family life. People just don't respect the nice guy. They don't. And I'm not saying you can't be kind. So there's a difference between being nice and kind. Being nice means you're basically afraid to offend someone, afraid of telling them something that's going to help them because it might, not come off as nice. Here's an example. So there was an email I wrote about the late comedian Patrice O'Neal. I think I've talked about it on this show before. It's for a blood sugar product. And in that email, I tell a story that basically shames the reader. Now, it doesn't shame them like in a finger pointing way, but it does shame them in the sense that it's intended to get them to think about the choices they're making and the lifestyle they're leading, because it could kill them and make their family mourn for them. And if they have kids, all that. Because that's kind of what happened to Patrice O'Neal. He let a lot of people down because nobody shamed him. Everyone was too nice. Nobody took him aside and said, look, man, you're at 500 blood sugar. You are like a walking cardiac event. What's going to happen to your mom, right? Who relies on you and your fiance and all that. Who's going to take care of them? Because you're putting your career over your health, which is something he said he did and he admitted to. So I'm not, he's gone. I'm not trying to shame him. I'm just saying, like, I use that story though to make a point. It wasn't a nice email. I'm not being nice. Nice emails and nice sales copy. You might tell people they want to hear. You might get lots of sales, but you're not setting them up. You're not like positioning them. You're not inspiring them to want to actually use your product because you're being too nice about it. You got to come out there and be a death ray sometimes. It just depends on what you're selling, obviously. But being nice in advertising and marketing, I'm telling you, it's just holding you back and you're not doing anyone any favors. If you know someone has a problem and you're not being honest with them about that problem and what that problem can do to them, you're being a nice guy and you're actually hurting them long term. They may even get your product because you made them feel good. You gave them the warm fuzzies, but they're not going to use it, because you haven't sufficiently said what needs to be said. You're too busy being nice. And, what happens to guys when it comes to relationships too. They sit there and they go and pick up a girl at the airport and do it and go move refrigerator and all this. And, with the implied promise that she'll give him something more than just a friendship. And then she just keeps stringing him along. Now you can't blame her because he's not doing anything. He's just setting him. He won't put his foot down and say, look, is this going anywhere? If it's not, listen, you're going to have to do your own refrigerator. Like, you have to pick yourself up at the airport or whatever. Like, one of the best things a guy can say, Jonathan, now this is a free tip for anyone, this is straight from the dating niche and it works, right? This will help you get your balls back a little bit. If you have a girl that you like and she's just using you and you're not getting what you want out of it. She asks you to do something. Let's say she says, hey, can you help me move my refrigerator? You say, that's boyfriend duty. Jonathan, I'm telling you, it works like a charm every single time. That's boyfriend duty. Hey, can you help me move? That's boyfriend duty. Can you pick up my friend from the airport? That's boyfriend duty. In other words, you're telling them, look, I'm happy to do this, but not like this. I'm not going to be your little hoe anymore.
How are you going to work it off?
You're going to have to work. You're going to have to work for it. Exactly. And so it is. But, this is just basic thing. Like, this is how everyone should be thinking. You don't have to give up everything to everyone and sacrifice everything to people who don't, appreciate it and don't respect you. And by being a nice guy, it's very hard for people to respect you as anything more than someone to use. And this is on every single level of life. It goes beyond dating. So execute your inner nice guy with extreme prejudice. Don't look back. Don't feel pity for the nice guy and even celebrate when he's gone. So that's number 6. And again, let me just add again, I'm not talking about literally. I'm about figuratively speaking. All right. The 7th chapter of the Villains book is Stake and Behead the Time Vampires. Now, Time Vampires is I don't know who invented it, but I know Dan Kennedy talked a lot about it in his No BS Time Management book, which I highly recommend everyone read. It's got a whole chapter on there on time vampires. And he only talks about like 2 or 3 of them. But in the Villains book, I talk about a whole bunch of ones that he doesn't talk about. And you have to understand there are people sucking up your time right now. Whether you realize it or not, I bet you cannot go any day. Most people cannot go through their day without somebody sucking up their time. And that time is valuable. Your time is everything. If you think about it, it's the only resource you can't manufacture. You can't manufacture time. All you can do is try to find ways to use what you have more efficiently. And it's not like money, which the government can just print up on demand. You can't just print time up on demand. It's very valuable. So if you don't know who these time vampires are, you don't understand how they operate, and you don't understand how to identify them, you won't even know that they're feeding on you. They're literally feeding on you. You don't even realize. They have you like in some kind of trance or something. I don't know how vampires do things. And you got to stake and behead them. And again, I'm not talking about literally. So let me be very clear here, Jonathan, for some of the, the weirdos who might be listening to this. I'm not saying you literally stake and behead somebody because they're taking your time. I'm not saying that. This is all figuratively speaking. It's sad that I have to say these things, Jonathan, but there really are some unbalanced people out there. And I want them to be very clear about this. Right? Now, moving on to the next chapter, chapter 8. Villains. Now, this is obviously a play on a popular quote, especially you see this going around Facebook a lot. Villains never lose sleep over the opinion of sheep. I got to tell you, there was a time when I first started my business, Jonathan, where I used to take every piece of hate mail seriously. I'd obsess over it. Oh, these people don't like me. Oh, no, they hate me. Yeah, I'm talking like 15 years ago. This isn't recent. Like recent now, I like it. I mean, please, send me some hate. I got fodder. But there was a time when other people's opinions would matter way too much. And now it doesn't. The only time if I don't seek someone's opinion out, I don't really want it. So just today, I got an email. Okay, to give you an example, just today. And I don't mean this in a bad way toward the person who sent me an email, because he was not being a troll. He was actually a very respectful guy. But he was giving me an unsolicited opinion. I used the word diabolical in my subject line. Now, the day of this recording that we're doing, I used the word diabolical. And he's like, you really should use simpler words, man. I had to Google diabolical.
Oh, boy.
And my first thought was, man, I think there's more a problem with your shitty vocabulary. That was my first thought, but I wasn't going to say it because he wasn't being a jerk or anything. He really was being very respectful. But that was the old Ben would have, the old off the cuff Ben, Bembo probably would have said that, but I wasn't going to say. I basically said, look, man, your vocabulary needs work, and you should probably work on that before you give unsolicited writing advice, right? So anyway, I found out though that he's not a native English speaker, right? But this is my whole point. I don't want people like that as email player subscribers. That's not who I'm looking for. I mean, it's no offense to them, but if you're selling, when I was selling a weight loss, absolutely, he actually was right. But I wouldn't have used that word. I wouldn't actually use anything over 3 syllables. That's a 5-syllable word. But he didn't take the time to ask questions and get clarity of why I would use a word like that. And he says, I do it all the time. Well, I do it on purpose because I kind of want to weed out people. I kind of was inspired by this guy, Jim Rutz, the late Jim Rutz, one of the most brilliant copywriters who ever lived. And I remember reading this interview he did, and he's like, I don't understand this, why copywriters feel like they have to talk down to their readers. He was, I'm selling an investment. He would sell a lot of investment stuff. I'm selling investment information to people who are probably smarter than me. I'm not going to talk down to them like they're idiots. And so be it. But that's my point. Don't let someone's opinion, if it's not like an opinion you've sought out, and it's not someone who has what you have, just don't worry about their opinion. And certainly don't lose sleep over it. And that's kind of what that chapter is about. It's about why you just don't do that. And, with some specific things in there I'm not going to go over now, but that's the gist of it. Now, chapter 9 is patience, a supervillain's deadliest weapon. Now, I got to tell you, Jonathan, this is I think we did a whole podcast about this, didn't we?
Yeah. Just
about patience. And this inspired you, if I remember correctly, that podcast. You were like, holy crap.
Yeah.
It's I didn't realize, patience it's weird. It's actually, I think I changed the chapter actually title. This is an old notes that I'm reading off of as far as what these chapters were called. I think I said I call it a super villain's superpower. I don't know. It's it's actual superpower in a way because so few people have it, and it gives you such an advantage over everybody because nobody's patient. Nobody wants delayed gratification anymore. They just want it now. They want it free, and they want it yesterday, right? But the person who has patience, you instantly have influence over those who don't, if you're smart about it. And that's what that whole chapter is about, because patience will give you the ability to do things most people will never be able to do. And, it's just one of those things. I don't know why it's not taught more often other than through empty memes on Facebook or whatever, but it's actually a very powerful thing to have in your corner. And so chapter 9 of the Villains book goes into depth about this and shows you how to use it. And then finally, Jonathan, to round out the Villains book, chapter 10 is simply be the Joker. Just be the Joker. Now, I'm not saying to bleach your skin. Okay. I'm not saying to become a homicidal maniac. That's not what I'm talking about. But there's something the Joker has. There's something that he had. There's a reason why he's the most iconic villain out there. I think they've even done polls on this, who's the most well-known villain. And it's always the Joker. And it's funny because the Joker is not a super-powered villain. He's actually just a regular person. And yet he has all the supervillains and superheroes alike freaked out. They're scared of him. And it's because he has an attribute that I talk about in chapter 10 of the Villains book And no, I won't tease you too much. I'll actually tell you what the attribute is, but I'm not going to give you all the ways of using it and applying it. But there is an attribute he has that makes him the most well-known and iconic villain, the scariest villain, the most effective villain out there. And that trait is impact. Everything he does has impact. And impact is the essence of persuasion and influence. If you don't have impact, you're not going to have anything. That means you're dead to people. They don't even know you exist if you don't have some kind of impact. Indifference is the death of persuasion, and having impact is the opposite of indifference. And so the book goes over 13 ways that he has impact in everything he does. And then so you can just take those 13 things and apply it to everything you do, whether it be your emails, your sales copy, your podcast, your personal life, whatever it is. You apply these 13 things and you almost can't lose. So those are the last episode in this one. Those are the 10 chapters of Persuasion Secrets of the World's Most Charismatic and Influential Villains. Those are kind of like highlights of each of them. If you want the real story and you want the more in-depth thing, it's not a long read. I think Richard Armstrong said he read it in 30 minutes. I'd say it's probably like a 30 to 40-minute read, maybe an hour tops if you're really slow. It's just not a long book. And you can get that at villainsbook.com. And a sequel will be coming out very soon. And in the meantime, I say read this one if you want to get better at this and have a more villainous business. And if you want to be the kind of person who's proactive and not reactive. Because we talked about this last week, Jonathan. The villains are villains because they're proactive. They set things in motion and then they watch everyone else react to it. And that's how you have an advantage in everything. So that's it for this week. Next week, we're going to change things up a little bit, Jonathan. I'm going to talk about my 10 favorite swipe file ads.
Uh-oh.
And these are the ads that I copied out by hand the most. These are the ads that I studied the most. These are the ads that I can trace the most amount of actual sales to. And I'll talk more about swiping and, how the wrong way to do it and the right way to do it. And so be it. So that's next week.
Oh, man. Can't wait. So another bensettle.com podcast is in the can. We will be back in your earbuds next time. Thanks for tuning in.
You've been listening to the bensettle.com podcast. To download yourself a free issue of Ben's prestigious $97 per month email players newsletter, which is going to show you 24 ways to write emails people eagerly read, click, and buy from, head on over to www.bensettle.com. Well, off you go. You know it makes sense.
This is the podcastfactory.com.